If you stopped working today, would your message still impact people in 100 years? Now, that's a question that I often ask myself. And that's not about hustle, it's about stewardship. Because this is the truth. We only have 168 hours every week, 8,736 hours every year. And we got to ask ourselves, when I take my last breath, will my life still have an impact? And the question, not will it, but how will my life have an impact? So recently, I heard a retired pastor say something that really stuck with me. I was on the phone with him, and he says, as long as he has breath in his lung, he carries the message. And that's about faithfulness. It's about truth. And so here's the question that follow me home. Will that message continue after you breathe your last breath? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Will the message continue after you breathe your last breath? And the truth is, service-based business can die with you. However, eternal assets don't. And so today we're going to be talking about building a kingdom legacy that outlives you. So let's jump right into it. Point number one, the false belief we carry. Just like you, just like me, we have heard it said over and over again, work harder, work hard. If you ask anybody, what is some of the keys to success, they will say work harder. Now, again, hard work, there's nothing wrong with it. However, if we're working hard, going the wrong direction, working hard without the right tools, without the right mindset, without the right intention and focus, then that hard work can go to waste. And so if we just work hard enough, that's not legacy, right? We know people who work real hard, but they're not really building a legacy that would outlive them, or they're not building a legacy that other people will benefit from, right? We've heard that. We've heard stories of people who've worked hard, blood, sweat, and tears. They've gotten to the top of their game. They've done great things. But guess what? They lost their family. They lost their health in the process because they were working hard, but they were working hard with the wrong intention, with the wrong motive, and not thinking about the legacy properly. And so the truth is, we can confuse income with impact. So just because you're creating income doesn't mean that you're having the right impact. So what I want to share with you is, and even what I have to tell myself, don't confuse busyness with multiplication. So just because we're busy doing things doesn't mean that we're multiplying. Remember the parable that Jesus taught, right? The parable of the talents. The one servant, he had a talent, and he was busy watching that one talent, but he wasn't multiplying. And going back to some of the episodes that I've said before, that I recorded before, is that God is concerned about multiplication. He's not just concerned about addition. He's concerned about multiplication. And so for me, I have to think about not how hard do I need to work, but how smart do I need to work? Am I putting my energy and my effort toward the right things that's going to, one, give God the best return on his investment? And two, is it going to multiply in a way that lasts beyond me? Because remember, our time is the most precious resource that we have. And so we want to leverage our time in such a way that it gives God the best return on his investment. Because this is what I want to say to you. Breadth-based income impact is good, but assets-based impact multiplies. Let me say that again. Breadth-based impact is good, but asset-based impact multiplies. Just like our time, Your lungs have limits, but legacy doesn't. Don't let the music die with you. That is something I've been telling Christians for the last year. Many Christians say that they want to write a book. Well, that is my goal, is not to let the music die with you. Because guess what? Once you die, the value that you have, that it can't come back out. And writing a book is a great way to increase your impact, your income, and influence. And my goal is to help 10,000 Christians in 2026 write and publish a book. So if that's you, I want you to download this free worksheet. It's called 5 Ways to Finding Your Unique Book Idea. And I want to help you write your book. Remember, don't let the music die with you. Go ahead and start singing it loud and proud right now. And remember, this is not about pride, but it's about productivity. Number 2, breadth-based legacy versus built legacy. So as we're talking about this particular topic, will your business survive you? Building eternal assets. We got to think about breadth-based legacy versus built legacy. And the truth is, breadth-based legacy is defined like this. It means your legacy stops when you die. And it goes back to a book that I'm working on and a movement that I'm building. Is called Don't Let the Music Die With You. And if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you've heard me say it, that my focus is to encourage people not to let the music die with them. And so I want to tell you, don't let the music die with you. And so if you got a breadth-based legacy, the music dies with you. Your business dies with you. Your legacy dies with you. It goes to the grave. And as I said before in some of the other podcasts and in some of the ways that I've spoken and in the book, is that the grave is sometimes the richest place on earth, because people take all of this value with them to the grave. And so that's breadth-based legacy. Built legacy is this. It's legacy that lives beyond you. Meaning when you take your last breath, your legacy is still going. And I'm talking about a legacy that is impacting the lives of people in a healthy way, in a way that honors God, in a way that creates value for other people. Right? Because we know other legacies that is still continuing, but it's negative. It's tainted. And so what I want to talk about in this point is that built-based legacy versus breadth-based. Again, if you're focused on breadth-based legacy, you're focused only on the work that you can do while you're breathing, while you're living, while you have time, right? As opposed to thinking about down the road, what happens when I die? Can I continue to make an impact? Can the message live beyond me? And so some of the ways to do that is, one, speaking. So right now, you can go out and speak, and you can record those speaking engagements. You can turn those into podcast episodes. You can turn those into transcripts. But not only that, when you speak, you can also carry that message forward through those other people. And so you want to think about that. You want to think about, how can I begin to build this legacy? So you want to have some things in place. And so the second thing that you can do to build a legacy and that can live beyond you is books. So I've already talked about that on this episode, but on all of the episode, that is my goal, to help 10,000 Christians write and publish a book, because that is built-based legacy. That we all have read books that's transformed our lives, even though those authors may not be living. And the best book that we read as Christians is the Bible. And those authors have died a long time ago, but they're still having an impact today through their writing. And so you want to think about, how can you use a book that can help take your legacy on even after you have taken your last breath? I've also mentioned podcasts. Podcast is a great way to expand your legacy beyond your breath, even while you're living. Think about this. A podcast, even this episode, is going to be impacting people's lives even while I'm sleeping. Meaning even now while I'm living. And so I'm doing this work one time, but it's steadily having an impact on the lives of people long after I've created it. So remember, we want to think about, as Christian, how can we leverage our time? How can we give God the best return on his investment, our time? Remember, we only have a certain amount of time. And so we have to make sure that we're thinking strategically, how do we use our time to give God the best return on his investment and create value for other people, as well as how do we build a legacy that lives beyond us. So those are books, podcasts, but digital courses. These are great ways to begin to make an impact long after you're gone. And these are things that you can, these are intellectual property that you can give to your children and your children's children, or you may want to put it in your estate, whatever. But these things can continue to have an impact long after you're gone. So you want to think about this. So I want to encourage you with this quote: don't just carry the message, build it. And a book can go where you can't. So think about that. A book can go where you can't go. So it can go across the enemy lines. It can touch lives. It can go into homes. It can go where you will never go. And so this is the truth. Your feet have limits, but your message doesn't. And so I want to say, as I close this point, don't let the music die with you. Build a legacy that can last beyond you. Point 3, I've talked about this several times on this podcast, but I want to bring it up again because it's so important and it ties in to what I'm saying. The 3 P's of transformation. As I wrote and published my first book almost 2 years ago, which is called Nothing is a Waste, Leverage the Past, Improve the Future. And if you haven't gotten a copy, I definitely suggest you get it, because it's going to show you how to leverage the past. It's going to show you how to get that information, that data, that content that you need in order to begin to create value that can live beyond you. And so the 3 P's of transformation, the first one is passive impact. It is residual value created once, but it blesses people repeatedly. And we've already talked about some of those passive income impact opportunities, which are books, digital courses, podcasts. It could be intellectual property frameworks. These things can continue to have an impact long after you're gone. So it's passive impact. The second thing is passive income. And so remember, income is not about identity, but it's evidence of the value that you've transferred to someone else. And so income and impact is tied together. And so when you create value for other people, it shows up in income. And so you want to think about passive income. And the third thing is positive influence. It's the idea that I have. You're helping people become more happy, healthy, and holy by the value you create for them, and by the income that you receive by creating the value for others. It creates what I call positive influence, helping people become more happy, healthy, and holy. And those are things that honors the Lord. And so take this from this point, because most Christians struggle with this, and even I struggled with it early on in my walk with Christ. and I'm still working through it to get today. But this is what I want to leave with you on this point. Income is not your identity. It's a measurement of the value you created. Let me say that again. Income is not your identity. It is a measurement of the value you created. And so as Christians, and even as myself, I want to create so much value, and I want to have, I want that to show up in dollars, in money, in income, not because I want a lot of income, but because it is a measurement. It is a way for me to measure that I am impacting the lives of other people in a positive way. And so that is my goal, is to make as much money as I can, because it is tied to the impact that I'm having for other people. So point 4, uniqueness is your raw material. And as I think about this, I think about 1 Corinthians chapter 12, where Paul is outlining that we are many members but one body, and we're all different. And I like to say this because I tell this to my children and I live by it. We're different to make a difference. And so your uniqueness is a combination of your experiences, your expertise, your education, the environments that you've been in, your energy, your ethnicity. These things make you unique. And so you can convert your uniqueness into value solutions that you can create for other people. Remember this, as you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, God does not give us a gift for ourselves. He gives us a gift so that we can share with other people. And so when you think about your uniqueness, it's not really about you. It's about how can you show up for other people. So I like to tell people, don't compare to covet, compare to complete. Let me say that again. Don't compare to covet, compare to complete. And so what that really says is that on your team, in your business, in your organization, you want to look around you and say, okay, how can I show up for my team? How am I different so that I can make a difference? And so when you begin to assess your uniqueness, you want to assess it in a way you can show up to complete your team more than to compete with your team. Right? I know this sounds crazy, but we have sometime in different teams in different organizations, people are competing with each other when they should be completing each other. It even happens in marriages, right? I'm not married to my wife to compete with her. I'm married to complete her. And so when you think about your uniqueness, it's not about you. It's about how can you complete others. And so when you think about your uniqueness, it gives you that raw material so that you can show up, so that you can stand out for production, not pride. And so your uniqueness is not about you being prideful, but it's about you showing up so that you can create value. It's about production. It's about producing value for other people. And so as you think about this point, your uniqueness, your past doesn't define you, but it does design your future. And so many times people tell you to forget about your past, but I want to tell you, you don't need to forget about your past. You need to leverage it. And as I've said before, is if you can't change it, why not use it? You can't change your past, but you sure can use it. So since you can't change it, why not use it? It's a resource and it makes you unique, and it helps you to stand out and stand up so that you can serve other people well. And remember this, you're different to make a difference. And so your uniqueness is the content that you can leverage to create value. Your story is the strategy, and your frameworks are the assets. So number 5, I want to speak directly to entrepreneurs, employees, leaders, because I want you to realize this, is that your business, if the business depends on you personally, you built a job. And that's important to think about, because remember, you want to think about multiplication. And if you have built your business around you, it's hard to scale. It's hard to multiply that asset. And as I think about this, even as I have my own property maintenance business, and as I think about this property maintenance business, one of the things that I am always making sure that I put into place is that my business does not depend solely upon me. Because if it does depend solely upon me, it's limited by what I can contribute. It's limited by my time. It's limited by my talents. It's limited by my treasures. It's limited by my trust. But when I can seamlessly integrate other people into it, and seamlessly integrate systems, I can scale it. But also, not only I can scale it, but I can serve my customers better. So you want to think about this. You want to think about wisdom. How can you, as an entrepreneur, how can you scale your business where it's not solely dependent on you? And for employees, if your wisdom never leaves your head, your influence retires when you do. And so as you think about it as an employee, you want to start thinking about how can you start building assets that when you do retire, you can be in a position where you can inspire. And again, as a Christian, it's okay to retire from a job, but we don't retire from service. And if you're already building assets right now while you're working, you can have content, you can have assets that you can use when you retire. Even if you don't need money when you retire, but maybe you do need money and you want to transition to a different type of work. Well, if you're already building assets, remember, going back to the point before that, if you understand your uniqueness and you understand also how to begin to build a legacy that outlives you, you're going to have content, you're going to have raw material that you can begin to use to take you into the future after you retire. It can be assets that you can use when you retire from your 9 to 5. And leaders, if you don't document what you've learned, your team starts from scratch when you're gone. And so you don't want your team starting from scratch. You want them to begin, you want them to be able to work without you. I've heard somebody say it before. As a leader, your job is to work yourself out of a job. Yeah, I'll say that again. You as a leader, you want to work yourself out of a job. And it's not your job as a leader to do everything. Your job is to lead other people into doing things. And I think about this as we think about Ephesians chapter 4. The scripture talks about how God has given different gifts to the body. And it says this, for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. And so God gives certain gifts to certain people, even in the body of Christ, to carry out the work of the ministry. And so, and it's not the job of those who he's entrusted those gifts of equipping to do the work. It's the job of the other people. And so we want to think about this. And so this isn't about building a brand. It's about giving God the best ROI. And so when you think about your life as an entrepreneur, when you think about yourself as an employee, as a leader, you want to think about how can I give God the best return on his investment. Now, I know this podcast is focused on marketplace missionaries. It's focused on those who are in the marketplace. But I do want to talk to fathers and mothers and families for just a little bit. So point 6, your business and your families are one stewardship. And so as you think about your work, it's not separate from you, because you are one person. And so you want to think about how do you steward your business and your family so that your legacy can live beyond you. And not only that, but how can you incorporate your family into your work, into your business? And so for me, I take my children with me to work, and so that's why I've chosen to homeschool, is so that I can take them, so I can integrate them into my business, into my work. Now, you may not be in a business where you can do that. You may not be in a job where you can do that, but start thinking about what does that look like to begin to incorporate that. And if you can, think about how can you do that. If you have the ability, the autonomy to make some adjustments in your life, in your work, do that, and includes your children in it, because that helps you to also build legacy. It helps you to steward well. And then think about this. Your children need more than memories. They also need frameworks. So I wrote a book, and it's called 100 Ways to Make Money with No Money. And my children are using those frameworks right now to think about making money, because they know this, as I pointed out in that book, 100 Ways to Make Money with No Money, is that the way that we make money is about creating value for other people. So right now, today, my youngest is 5, my oldest is 12, and they're all 5 of my children are thinking about, how can I create value for other people? And so I'm giving them that framework, that making money is not about just making money, but it's about how do you create value for other people. And then the last thing on this point is your voice is powerful, but your document and wisdom is transferable. Begin to write this down right now, because your voice, it dies with you. But when you document wisdom, it lives beyond you. So right now, as of today, I've written and published 8 books, and I've written several other things, and I'm working on my 9th book right now, which is called Don't Let the Music Die With You. So I have some wisdom that my children will be able to tap into long after I'm gone. They're going to be able to hear my voice. They're going to be able to see what I've done, because I've made podcasts, I've made videos. They're going to be able to see that. And so if I build money but don't build people, I didn't build legacy. And so begin to think about building your family, because that's legacy. Missionary Moneymaker, where making a dime is making a difference. This is a discipleship movement, a marketplace masterclass, and a bold reframe of mission and money, helping Christians increase impact, income, and influence without guilt, without comparison, just calling. Number 7, retirement reframe. I've already said it in the earlier point, in point 5, but we want to think about, how do we retire to inspire? Because we have to realize this: God did not create us to live a life of consumption, but contribution. And when you think about retirement in our country, it's people who are retiring just so they can sit around and so they can consume. But as a Christian, we're not looking to retire to sit down and consume. That's a waste of time and energy if all we're doing is consuming. In fact, there are studies that's been shown that people who are just thinking about consumption, who retire, they lose their identity. But more than they lose their identity, they lose what they were created to do. God made us for contribution, not consumption. And so this retirement mindset, what it does is it strips us from the very thing God created us to do, and that is to contribute. He's given us the mandate to serve, to take care of things, to multiply. And so as you think about retire to inspire, this is what I want you to focus on. What you need to do is you need to create a contribution plan. not just for money, but for if you're going to retire, you need to have a plan on how you're going to use that time to contribute to the lives of other people. Because remember, the contribution plan that we often think about is money. How do I put money aside so that I can retire, so that I can consume? That's not God's plan. But how we are to be thinking as a Christian, what is my contribution plan with my time, with my talent, with my treasure, with my trust? What am I going to do when I don't need money anymore? What am I going to do with my life? How am I going to continue to add value to other people? Because that's the truth. God has called us to contribute. And so nothing in this world works well when it's just sitting, when it's not serving something else. It dies. Think about the Red Sea. There is no water flowing out of it. And because all it's doing is just taking in and not giving out. And so if you think about a house, a building, a vehicle, when these things are just sitting, they begin to die. They begin to crumble. We are all made, as I tell my children, we're all made for movement. We're all made to contribute. We're not made to sit around and just soak up energy, but we're made to contribute. So we as Christians, we want to create a contribution plan to be a river, not a lake. We want to be a river that's continuing to give and give and give and flow and flow and flow to create life for other people. And so if you're going to retire, you need to retire to inspire. So if you're still breathing, you still have an assignment. Let me say it again. If you're still breathing, you still have an assignment. It goes back to what that pastor told me. He says, as long as I have breath in my lungs, I carry the message. And so as you think about your life as a Christian, if you can retire, remember this, you still have breath in your body. And as long as you have breath, you still have an assignment. I had a young man ask me, actually just yesterday, because I was talking about this retired pastor, and he said, man, I didn't know pastor could retire. And it just blew him away. He said, I didn't know pastor retired. And so, and I had to tell him that this pastor, he retired from shepherding the body of Christ, but he did not retire from serving. He just stepped away from the pulpit ministry, the shepherding ministry, and he's still serving. And so this is the truth, is that as long as you have breath in your body, you carry the message. And what I would say, as you're carrying that message, give it out. Take it in and live it out. Be that river. And the last point, number 8, the core legacy question. This is the core legacy question. Will the message carry on after your last breath? I want you to think about this, because it is a sobering, it's a, not a sobering, but it is a question that you need to think about. You got to consider it. It's a question of urgency, because nobody knows if they will still be breathing tomorrow. Not even me, as I record this podcast. This could be the last podcast episode that I record. And if it is, I'm thankful that I've been able to record this podcast. Because the truth is, we need to be asking ourselves this question right now. Will the message carry on after my last breath? Do I have something in place that can live on beyond me? That is what we need to ask ourselves. And so I want to challenge you, my brothers, my sisters in Christ, to begin to think about that legacy plan. What does that look like for you? Begin to write out your eulogy. What would people say about you? Or better, what would people say about you long after you're gone? Will they remember you? And I want to say, this is not about pride, but it's about productivity. Can you create enough value for other people while you're still breathing, that 100 years from now, they'll still be thinking about you? I want to do that. I want to give God the best return on his investment, that people will know that as long as Carl had breath in his body, he was committed to giving God the best return on his investment. He was committed to glorifying Christ with his life. He was committed to creating value for other people. Will that be your testimony? Is that your mindset? So I want you to think about that. Will the message carry on after your last breath? If you disappear tomorrow, would your wisdom disappear too? I want to tell you, don't let the music die with you. Don't carry it to the grave. We need it. People need it. So I want to challenge you to choose one thing that you're going to make an impact on. Choose one thing that you're going to do tomorrow, today, that's going to allow you to build your legacy. One, write one chapter. Record one lesson. Teach one framework. Outline one course. Publish one message. And guess what? Don't wait for perfect. Start with what you already live. Because remember, God has given you life, breath, and everything. That's not random. That's investment. The question is not how much money you made. The question is, what did you multiply through you? What multiplied through you? And as long as you have breath, carry the message. But don't stop there. Build it, record it, write it, multiply it. So that when you breathe your last breath, the message is still breathing. That's kingdom legacy. Don't let the music die with you. Welcome to Missionary Moneymaker, the podcast where making a dime is making a difference. I'm Carl James Wynn Jr. And we believe this: mission and money were never meant to be separated. Every Christian in the marketplace is a missionary, called to create value, solve problems, and steward influence for the glory of God. This podcast is a discipleship movement, a marketplace masterclass, and a prophetic reframe of how we think about work, wealth, and calling. Here, we equip entrepreneurs, professionals, and leaders to increase their impact, income, and influence without guilt, without comparison, just calling. If you're ready to leverage your past, walk in obedience, and build with purpose, you're in the right place. Let's go to work.